Good evening and welcome to tonight's fireside chat. As I said last week during Lent, I'm going to be using the theme created for community in my fireside chats. And tonight we're going to talk about being in community with creation. I don't think there's any question anymore that our human actions are leading to our earth changing. The question is only what are we going to do about it? And I will not be covering what I think we should or should not be done about it tonight. I'll leave that debate for another time and maybe for our politicians to sort out. Instead, I want to talk about something I think more important for us. As people of faith, what is our relationship to creation? And there's three possible answers to this question. The first is probably the most prevalent, the longest lasting in our thinking, and also the most dangerous. It is that God has given us dominion over creation. It comes from a misreading of the Genesis chapter 1, which is the first creation story in Genesis, when God says, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." In this view, God has set human beings apart to be rulers of the world. And the major problem with this idea is that we can somehow separate ourselves out from creation, that we are here to rule it and use it up for either our needs or our pleasure. That nothing we do is wrong because the earth was given to us and we are in control of it. I remember my congregation in New York who made this point one time after, as a congregation, we watched Al Gore's movie together. The gist of his argument was, so what if we use up all the oil? It's our right as human beings. It's a problematic way to see the world, isn't it? It is setting humans up as gods in the world, instead of seeing ourselves as creatures made by our Creator. And all of our sin comes when we exalt ourselves over things. The second answer is actually better and comes closer to what I think God intended. It's that we're stewards of the earth, that God created the earth and expects that we will care for it. God entrusted us to protect the earth and all the creatures in it. This is better. It tries to restore the idea that humans are at least responsible for the care of creation. It tries to restore some balance between us and the earth. The problem is that humans in this model are still considered separate from the earth. We still have control over it. And this leads to our third and last model. And that is that we are dependent upon the earth. That humans and all of creation have a web of dependency with one another. That we cannot live without creation. We need trees and plants to breathe. We need bees for honey. We need plants and animals for food. We need sun and rain for our crops. Everything within the created order has a place and plays a role in life. And we are just a part of that. Without the earth, we cannot live. If we don't have clean water, clean air, we cease to exist. That's how God made the world. He made it so that we would be dependent upon it. And everything is dependent upon everything else. Our congregation a couple years ago studied Pope Francis' encyclical on creation. And I would urge you and encourage you to go look it up on the internet and read it. It's worth your time. The Pope in the encyclical makes this exact point over and over again. The Pope wrote, "The social dimensions of global change include the effects of technology, innovations on employment, social exclusion, and inequitable distribution and consumption of energy and other services, social breakdown, increased violence, and a rise in new forms of social aggression, drug trafficking, growing drug use by young people, and a loss of identity." Or again, he writes, "The human environment and the natural environment deteriorate together. We cannot adequately combat environmental degradation unless we attend to the cause related to human and social degradation. In fact, the deterioration of the environment and of society affects the most vulnerable people on the planet. Both everyday experience and scientific research show that the gravest effects of all attacks the environment are suffered by the poorest." The encyclical makes the point over and over how dependent we are on the natural world, how destroying the planet leads to destroying the social structures that bind us together, In other words, how we treat the earth is directly connected to how we treat one another. If you think you can dominate the natural world, chances are you think the same thing about human relationships. You think that some people have more say in how the world works. You tend to have a hierarchical view of religion, politics, and work, instead of a view that we all share in this life together, and that every voice and every human being matters, that every person is a beloved, created creature of God, that all things in life are interconnected. I'll admit this to all of you tonight. I am not the best environmentalist. I tend to like city living. I like to visit the woods, but I would never want to live there. I believe in being sustainable, but often the reality of changing my behavior, spending more money, or being inconvenienced overcomes my desire to live more sustainably. And I confess my sin on this one. I know I should do better. But what I do want us to continue to come up, but I do want us to continue to come up with answers. I want us to continue to think through what we use and why. What do we consume and why? How does the things we choose hurt the planet we depend upon? I'm thankful for the Pope and his encyclical that remind us that the deterioration of our environment disproportionately affects the most vulnerable people in the world. I saw this firsthand when I visited El Salvador. I noticed the trash is really the first world trash that we dump on them. So where does all this leave us? For me this Lent, I'm going to work on shifting my thinking from a model that says we are separate from God's good creation to a model that sees how connected we are to creation. My life is dependent on the sun and the rain, the shark and the sunfish, the mosquito and the cow. That my life is dependent on what God has created out of love for me and for all creation. I hope that this shift in thinking will do two things. One, make me appreciate the created world in a new way. And two, make me more zealous for protecting the world that we live in. And that is a Lent goal worth growing towards. How about you? What is your faith telling you about your connection to creation? What does your faith tell you about your dependence upon creation? How can we better integrate ourselves into God's good creation? I'll leave you tonight with a prayer from St. Francis of Assisi. Praise be you, my Lord, with all your creatures, especially Sir Brother Sun, who is the day and through whom you give us light. And he is beautiful and radiant with great splendor, and bears a likeness to you most high. Praise to be you, my Lord, through sister moon and stars. In heaven you form them clear and precious and beautiful. Praise be you, my Lord, through brother wind, and through the air, cloudy and serene, with every kind of weather, through whom you give subsistence to your creatures. Praise be you, my Lord, through sister water, who is very useful and humble and precious and chaste. Praise be you, my Lord, through brother fire, through whom you light the night, and he is beautiful and playful and robust and strong. Amen. I'll see you next week as we explore what it means to be in community with all the saints. Until then, may God continue to bless you.